Good morning. Today I want to talk about how to find and refine your purpose. Um, and a few introductory notes. One is that these talks are slow on purpose, and they are, I pause, I take breaths. They're sort of the antithesis of the addictive dopamine spiking screen shows that are just everywhere right now. And the reason I make these videos that way is because it's what we need. We need less just really high level stimulation and more slow, still, contemplative thought. So put it on the background, wash some dishes, and let's have a conversation about purpose, how to find your purpose, and how to deepen your purpose, and how to actually refine your purpose. Because let's start with that. I think so. Your purpose isn't like something that you just land on and then that's it for the rest of your life. I mean, I think some people have that in them, but what's for the rest of us, what it's like is it's a process. You sort of continually evolve, and your purpose sort of changes over time. And your purpose it's sort of a made-up thing, or it's totally a made-up thing. It doesn't really exist. You are uniquely qualified for something, and so defining your purpose makes it easier for you to have a meaningful and joyful life. Like if you don't have a solid purpose that you can fall back on when life gets hectic or difficult, sometimes it's a lot easier to just kind of fall apart. So maybe I'll just work backwards from my purpose, which again, it's a process. It kind of, the way I articulate it evolves over time. So right now, my purpose is I've worked through this many times. So the simple way to say my purpose is my purpose is to be a force to accelerate the transformation from a sort of a short-sighted, juvenile, results-oriented culture that dominates planet Earth right now to more of a nature-based, wisdom-based culture. So to be part of that transformation, and also a peaceful culture. And then at the same time, for me personally, inside of that larger vision, so we should probably talk about that. There's bigger visions in terms of your role in society and in the world. And then there's sort of smaller aspects of that. So a smaller aspect for that's more tuned in to my specific skills and interests is helping environmentalists, people of maybe yourself, people of a nature consciousness who understand the importance of nature and who really want to make the world a more vital and energized place. Is to help you guys, to help people of that nature to thrive, to help you live healthy, happy, wealthy lives that are effective and productive. So that's my purpose. Now, how did I come about that? With a lot of pain and suffering, which is unfortunately kind of true. If you're grappling with, what is my purpose, it's kind of a painful process. So looking back on my life, on how I did it, you know, it's something that you need to just grapple with. And how do you grapple with it? Like I have, and I don't necessarily think everybody's got to do this, but I have folders from my 20s of all of these different iterations of my purpose that I worked through, tried on time and time again. And they always changed a little bit. But so how do you refine that? So again, I want to encourage you to join me in the breathing and the pausing, because we don't need to be thinking all the time. We don't need constant stimulation all the time. So I'm going to pause and breathe to find a deeper access of thought. In stillness, we can find better wisdom. So the thoughts that bubbled up in that little micro stillness is totally distracted by the bicyclist who was wearing a Jamaica jersey that I just drove by. Never seen that before in Northern California. Pretty cool. He had a big afro too. So I would be remiss. I don't normally talk like that, but I like that word. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up everything that I've done to get to real clarity around my purpose. So one was I started Vipassana meditation training back in 1995. That was in my 20s. I did, over the years, I've done 12 10-day retreats and then tried to keep up a daily practice, which I've failed many, many times. But the point is I keep trying, I keep moving in that direction. It's not about succeeding. It's about, putting forth the effort. So that's one. And I would recommend meditation and stillness as a very powerful, potent ingredient to discovering your purpose. If you're constantly taking in information, you can't get quiet enough to actually see what you truly are. And that's one of the dangers of using AI, is that if you continually outsource your thinking to AI, then you don't drop into the still part of yourself to find your deep wisdom. Not just AI, social media, everything. Probably social media even more than AI, both equally, I would say. I also, I put myself through several solo initiations. I did 7 days alone in the wilderness. I did 14 days alone in the wilderness. I did 30 days alone in the wilderness, backpacking, and each with an intention to sort of I wanted to break my fear of loneliness. That was sort of the initial part of what I was doing. But then what also came from that is some of the deeper wisdom of what I'm doing here on Earth. So that's another key element, is putting yourself through the initiations that seem to work for you. In addition to those self-imposed initiations, I also put myself through, landmark education classes, men's group initiation, my yoga teacher training back in the 90s, that was also another initiation. A point I'd like to make here is that, when I decided in 1996 that my purpose was to be a yoga teacher, like to be someone who tried to help people find that sort of enlightenment and health. And then I went down that path, and I went down the full-time, world-class trained yoga teacher path for 5 years. And then I ultimately realized it wasn't right for me. There were parts of it that worked. The teaching part worked, the mental, emotional training worked, but the physical class part of it, the way that it's done in Western civilization, didn't work for me. So that was part of my learning process. I had to learn that that wasn't my purpose. So for you, how's this going to help you? I guess I really want to bring home the point that you're not going to necessarily nail it, and don't expect yourself to nail it, but be willing to go through the process of trying out new stuff. And I think also in the process of trying out new stuff, one of the things that you're going to have to do is, not have to, but it's going to help you accelerate your clarity, is to have those times to pause and reflect. That's one thing that I've done a lot also in my particular journey, is I would take, 1 month, 1.5 month, 2 month trips. And I like to surf, so I would take surfing trips. And each one of those trips became its own initiation. I did backpack Europe when I was, in my early 20s. That was another type of initiation. Spent, a few weeks in Costa Rica, a month in Panama, another month in the Virgin Islands, another 2 months in Costa Rica, another couple of months or a month and a half in Mexico. So each one of those trips, you have to come at it with attention if you're doing something like that. Like, you don't just vacate. So I love the idea that taking a vacation is absolutely the wrong thing to do. What you want to go on is a recreation. So the root of vacation is vacate. It's just to disappear from your life and to just kind of like disappear. But a recreation is to recreate yourself. Now there's a power in like vacating and like completely letting go. So you do that, but then after you vacated and let go of your life, your current life, you actually then recreate yourself out when you're in this downtime. So that would be another element, which I would say in your process of finding your purpose, is you've got to vacate your life and recreate yourself. So you could go on a vacation, but only the first half of your trip should be a vacate, and the second half of your trip should be a recreate. So you're recreating yourself. And you can do mini ones. I just feel like it's so much more impactful when you take bigger ones, and they take more work, and there's a whole arc to it. It's an adventure, you've got to plan, you got to prepare, you got to put everything in order, then you go on the adventure, you go out. It's like the hero's journey. Every time you go on a big trip, it's a journey. It's like there's all kinds of emotional things that come up. Whatever challenges you're facing in your life, they will bubble to the surface and be very present. And so you got to deal with those challenges. And then there's the process of the trip, and then there's the resolution and the coming home. So it is like a mini hero's journey, and it's an initiation of sorts. So I guess another theme that's developing in this idea of finding your purpose is I really think it's important to let go of this idea that you're just going to find it and then that's it. Now that's fine, and some people do that, but if you're expecting that and that's not happening, then be okay with moving it. Now I also like this idea that I came to about 15 years ago. I had one of the first most successful yoga web pages ever created. And when I left being a yoga teacher full-time, it was called freedomyoga.com. And when I left yoga full-time, I just let it die. And one of my friends who was a computer nerd at the time, he's like, dude, what's going on with your webpage? I'm like, I let it die. He's like, you did? That was the highest searched yoga webpage on the web. So I totally blew it. And so ever since that big mistake, again, learn from your mistakes. Ever since that big mistake, I like this idea, since I like to surf, of carving. So instead of just jettisoning one thing and picking up another thing like I did, I left the yoga world and I became an ecological builder, back to the land, living in the soil, which is, a huge part of my life and still is. But instead, what I should have done was sort of turned and become, the ecological teacher, the ecological spiritual teacher. I should have kept that website, should have kept that part of my life alive, and then kept moving that direction, because ultimately I circled back to it anyways, just in my own refined way. So I offer that up to you as a really powerful way. Like if you're feeling the desire to sort of pick up and like dump everything that you've worked for because it doesn't feel like a right fit, just take a pause and see if there's a way that you can change the people you're working with, change the way you're working, change the environment that you're in, change the town, change the country, change the approach. If I were to go back and do the yoga teacher thing again, what I would do now is when I was making that transition to becoming a green builder, and I really wanted to work with my hands. I was missing that being a yoga teacher. I wanted to build things. Is I would have started building my eco builder life and my back to the land homesteader life inside of a teacher. Inside and keeping that, I'd probably keep that website and have done, sort of tweaked it a little bit so that it became more of a place for consciousness around nature and living close to the land, and then our materials and working with our hands, and still kept something like. So I'm just, throwing out ideas for me, just so that you can see how you could potentially take something that you don't like maybe a job you don't like or a business that isn't quite working for you, and instead of just dumping it, just arc. So I really like it. So the idea, I didn't really communicate it. One of my favorite things in surfing is a big arcing turn, just a big carving turn. So do that when you're making a shift in your job or your area or your relationships. Try to make a big carve so you're not just, falling and then having to get up and catch a new wave. You're taking the momentum that you already have and turning it into something else. That's the point. So that's another one of those. So as you're redefining your purpose and realizing that you want to change certain aspects of your life, just use the momentum that you've already got. Momentum is difficult to build. You always want to build on your momentum and try not to lose the momentum that you have. And that being said, sometimes it's going to be appropriate to just pick up and dump part of your life as it was completely misaligned. In my particular case, the yoga teaching wasn't completely misaligned. It was just the exercise class part that didn't work for me. And so I could have totally taken that mantle and moved it into the mental, emotional, psycho-spiritual realm and kept teaching. And I didn't do that. So that's learned from my mistake. I had to come back to it later and have lost a lot of momentum. So keep your momentum up. Pause, breath break. Integrate. Return to the main point. Purpose. So what if you're struggling to find your purpose? Well, I would also say if you're struggling to find your purpose, you go try a day in the life. So this is something that I would give people who are, what career advice? People get these ideas. I got these ideas. We all get these ideas. Oh, I want to own a coffee shop, or I want to be a speaker on this public stage, or I want to be a writer. You got to try a day in the life of that lifestyle and really feel what it feels like before you commit to it. I've mentioned it before, but the book Design Your Life is really good, and they have this way where you create 3 paths. You try to empty your mind and you create 3 paths forward. One is kind of the path that you're currently on, and then 2 are far out wild ideas that would just speak to you. And then you just do the minimum input to just sort of test them out. So you don't pick up and move and invest all your life savings into one thing. You test it. And you try a day as a writer, you try a life as a writer for a week, and just see what it's like, what it feels like, or a month. So it's the minimum amount that you need to in order to get a feel for it. All right, talk's over. I'm out of time. Oh man. All right, let's finish up here. I have arrived. I think these talks that I give are a good example. I'm committed. I'm teaching. I have to do it. It's in me. There's a saying that I really like. Is that, don't become a writer or a director or an author or a speaker or a whatever it is. I'm just throwing out things that come to my mind. Don't do that for the money. Do it because you just have to do it. I have to talk. I have to give these talks. I have to try to share what I've got inside of me, or a part of my soul starts to die. So there you go. There's the nugget. Like I've said in all the other ones, that usually comes later on. To find your life's purpose, it's the thing that you have to do. And if you don't do it, it feels like you're dying inside. So I have to do this. This is part of my life purpose, is to try to teach others these things, or something inside of me starts to die. And if I do it, something inside of me grows and lives. And Joseph Campbell would say it this way: you see when a student would tap on to that thing, and like your eyes, you feel an energy, and your I get distracted. My wife just drove by. You get the sense of really being in your body, like the whole body kind of energizes. And not from like an addiction, like, oh, that was a great ice cream or a great sugar, or I see something I want. It's not that. It's different. It's more subtle and more internal. It's not just a dopamine rush. It's kind of a subtle, deeper one. That is a difficult one to convey. But it's that thing that if you don't do it, it feels like you're dying. And if you do it, you feel you have an aliveness in you. Because really what we want more than anything else, more than meaning, more than purpose, is another nugget, is you want aliveness. That's what you seek. You don't really need purpose. You want a sense of aliveness. And that's why people go to phones and screens, and because it gives you that temporary sense of aliveness. But the purpose thing is more having that long-term sense of aliveness that feels like what you're doing actually matters. I feel the work that I'm doing matters. So you have to run it through that filter in your head too. Do I feel like this matters? And that has to be a yes. Okay, I hope that's helpful. Again, I am going to be starting a small cohort of, on a regular basis, of group coaching. So leave comments, questions below. There should be a link in my main page about trying to get on a consult call with me, so you can do that too. That's in the description on the Mike D. Stokes YouTube channel page. Now, there may be other places in the future, but that's where it is now. Okay, thank you. Have a great day.